All right, we're recording. Michael Shermer, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, nice to see you again, Jake.
Great to see you again. So I wanted to ask you about your view about the evidence about aliens that Avi Loeb and others have brought up. What do you make of this? Do you think that UFOs are out there? Do you think we have substantial evidence to think there could be aliens? I mean, what do you make of all that?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this for, I don't know, like 50 years since I got interested in this subject, reading Carl Sagan in college in the 1970s. Yeah. So I think it's good to make a distinction between two different questions. Are they out there somewhere, and have they come here? So, of course, we don't have any evidence of either one. But the SETI scientists and astronomers and, people that think about this from a purely scientific perspective, using something like the Drake equation as a heuristic for, back of the envelope calculations. What are the odds? Hundreds of billions, maybe as much as 1 trillion galaxies, each of which has hundreds of billions of stars. And now we know pretty much every one of those stars has planets, half a dozen to a dozen different planets. Now, most of those are not going to be conducive to life evolving, but, the raw numbers are so large that it would be astonishing if, we were the only ones. So I think there's a pretty good chance that although complex, intelligent, communicating life is probably very rare, the raw numbers are so big that it would be astonishing if we were the only ones. So they're probably out there. Well, where are they? The Fermi paradox. And my answer is they're probably out there, but they're probably rarer than we think. And by they, I mean not just complex life forms, but intelligent complex life forms capable of communicating. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to get in touch with them. And so all of that means it's probably pretty rare, and it's mostly empty space. The chance of them actually finding Earth, and coming here is pretty remote. And the evidence that they have, which a lot of ufologists believe, is pretty crummy. And so I tend to be skeptical of that. I don't think they've come here.
What do you make of Avi Loeb's purported evidence?
Well, I'm on the Galileo Project team with, as Avi's sort of token skeptic. I'm not the only one. There's other people on. Stephen Dick, who's a historian of science, has written a lot about the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence, including the history of it going all the way back to ancient times. He's as skeptical as I am about all this. I think Avi's search is good. That is, setting up these observatories around the world with high resolution cameras and microphones, and let's see if we can get to the bottom of it. So far, all they recorded are birds and planes and things like that. But if there's something to see, if these Navy pilots and others are correct in when they say we see these UAPs all the time, well, then they should be all over the place, and we'll have no trouble capturing high resolution videos and photographs of them. Supposedly there are such things, high resolution videos and photographs that the government is keeping secret. But, we can't do anything about that. It's secret, if it's even true. And so what Avi is doing an end run around the government and just saying, well, the skies are not classified. We can set up our cameras and film anything we want in the sky. So that's what we're going to do. I don't think they're going to find aliens or anything like that, but, I'm open to the search for it. Now, the third piece there is Avi's claim that in dredging up these tiny spherules from the bottom of the ocean that have chemical or metallic elements or ratios that are not commonly seen, that I've talked to a lot of other scientists about, and they're all pretty skeptical that these are extraterrestrial technology debris from a crashed technology satellite, from some other planet. But, to his credit, he's not claiming that he has found it. He's just saying it could be. And I've seen it in real time, the media rather distort what Avi says. I mean, he says, this is what I think, this is what we found. Here's what I think it could mean. And then, 2 paragraphs later, Avi thinks he's found aliens. No, he doesn't think that. He didn't say that. So, there's something about this subject that causes people to really lose their minds. I mean, I was thinking about this with the Bob Lazar story. Claims that he worked at Area 51, that he actually saw and worked on back engineering UAPs or UFOs. That is definitely off-world extraterrestrial spaceships that are not earthly. Okay, this is what he says. But he also says he went to Caltech and MIT, got a graduate degree in physics from MIT and engineering from Caltech, and neither one of which is true. Stan Friedman, the pro-ufologist, who absolutely believes we've been visited by aliens, he looked into Bob Lazar's credentials. He called Caltech, he called MIT. Anybody could do this. You can check to see if I went to Pepperdine and so on. And they'll have the records. They will report them. And both MIT and Caltech says we have no records of Bob Lazar ever attending any classes at these institutions. And then Stan Friedman, to his credit, did a little more homework and found out that, in fact, Bob Lazar went to Pierce Junior College in Los Angeles and took a couple of physics classes. All right. So if he's going to lie about something that is that easy to check, well, first of all, and that's academic fraud, and that's the end of your career if you do that. But because he's telling stories about aliens, people just seem to want to overlook it. And I'm afraid that most of the UFO history is fraught with things like that. Just people that are probably not mentally well, who think they, were abducted and they spent time on the alien spaceships and they come back. Of course, they only have stories. They never pick up a little knob or a little widget from the dashboard or anything like that. So, unfortunately, the evidence, even of the UAP videos, there's only 4. They just recycle them over and over and over as if there's hundreds. There's just 4. And supposedly there's more, but no one is seeing them. I mean, no one in the public, no journalists or anything.
So what is the stance of Avi or the Galileo Project? Because you're saying that they were misquoted, claiming that there is alien evidence?
Yeah.
So what is the statement, or what is the conclusion?
The way Avi phrases it, is like, well, we're searching, we haven't found anything yet, but we may have found something. And here's what I dredged up from the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. And here's the ratios of these metals, a very technical paper he published. You can look at it and go, okay, what am I looking at here? And then I ask scientists that study that sort of thing. And their attitude is, no, that we don't think that what he found is extraterrestrial in nature. We think it came from Earth. It's, debris from industrial waste, that kind of stuff that's found its way to the bottom of the ocean. So they disagree with Avi, but he's just saying, let's keep searching. We're not going to find aliens if we don't look. So that's true. And he's as frustrated as I am he doesn't consider himself part of the UFO community, because the UFO community is a different cohort of people than the SETI scientists or the Galileo Project. These people, the ufologists, they think it's a done deal. We absolutely know for sure, 100% aliens are here. We have them. The government is keeping them in warehouses somewhere, and they're lying to us about it. That's what's his name, Lou Elizondo's new book, Imminent. He says it's done 100%. We know for sure aliens are here. Oh yeah, show us. Oh, can't. Well, why can't you show us? Well, it's classified. But I talked to somebody who knows somebody that said they saw it. Sorry, I've been hearing that for 50 years, and no one will show us the actual spaceship and the aliens. Come on.
So your stance and the stance of Galileo is that there's no conclusive evidence, but you're hopeful that you'll get some. So you're not saying we've found evidence, but you're also not discrediting the evidence that you do have. You're just saying, hey, we are in pursuit of evidence, right?
Correct. Okay. Yeah. And I support the SETI program too. Keep listening for radio signals, or there's other astronomers also looking for what are called technosignatures. There's 2 things: biosignatures. There's several astronomers that are using like the James Webb Telescope and the Hubble Telescope, and I think there's one other, Kepler, in which the light from the star behind the planet, which shines through the planet's atmosphere, and the light comes to Earth through our telescopes, if you're picturing that. So, here's us on Earth, here's another exoplanet, and behind it is its star. This has to be perfectly lined up. And you get the light coming through the atmosphere, and the atmosphere shows traces of gases, which you can tell by the change in the light. That could be like methane or something that's biologically produced. So that would be a biosignature. They haven't found this yet, but there's some hints that may be.
The scientists who are pushing back against Avi's findings, saying that it's not legitimate evidence of aliens or UFOs, what is your response to their criticism?
I think their criticisms are good. I had Avi on the show. I talked to him for quite a while about this after his new book came out, Interstellar. And I actually, to his credit, I told him, I have contacted your colleagues and others that are experts in these little spherules that are found on the bottom of the ocean floor. I didn't know anything about this. I never even heard of these little spherules. But apparently there's trillions of them. They're like microscopic in size, maybe a millimeter at most, that are just covered the bottom of the ocean all over the earth, right? Most of them is just debris from industrial waste that just gets in the atmosphere and falls into the ocean, sinks. And so Avi went to the South Pacific near Papua New Guinea last summer, 2 summers ago. I guess now we're in the fall, and dredged using a magnetic sled a bunch of these little spherules. Now, he claims you do a chemical test on these, and they show ratios or of isotopes or whatever it is inside these little things that are not industrial waste from Earth, that they could be extraterrestrial. So I asked these scientists, what do you think? And they go, we don't think so. But a test would be, if he dredges where he thinks, well, the reason he dredged where he did, I should back up, is that NASA reports that a meteorite struck there. I think it was in 2014. And that NASA has pretty good data about exactly where this meteorite entered the Earth's atmosphere and burned up and cruised across the Pacific Ocean as it was burning up and landed in this area near Papua New Guinea. So a test would be, okay, dredge where you think the meteorite went, and then dredge somewhere else, like 1,000 miles away or something, and then compare the ratios of the little spherules, because apparently there's spherules all over the Earth. And so A/B tests like that. And to again, to his credit, Avi said, that's what we're going to do in our next expedition. Okay, good.
Got it. So there's skepticism, but there's hope at the same time.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, again, skepticism is just asking for evidence. Keep an open mind, right? But you got to have evidence for your belief.
And sorry for me asking, but what's your role exactly with Galileo? Because I know that your background is not in astronomy, right? It's not, you're
my background's history of science. So
yeah. So what's
professionally, just studying the subject of UFOs and SETI and all that stuff, possibility of extraterrestrial life for, that's what we've been doing for 35 years here at Skeptic, and I've been doing it since college, as I mentioned. So Avi has me on as sort of like the token skeptic. Stephen Dick, the historian, is kind of same role, and there's others. There's others who also tend to believe, like Mellon. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I can't remember his first name now. No, that's embarrassing. But Chris Mellon. So I mean, he's fairly confident that that the aliens are probably here and being covered up by the government. He worked in the government. He knows that the government lies and covers things up. That's true. We know this. Wikipedia, the WikiLeaks, the Pentagon Papers, the Afghanistan paper. We know the government lies and covers stuff up, but that doesn't mean they lied and covered up aliens. It just means sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You have to take it case by case.
Yeah. Got it. And to be rigorous in how we view the evidence and to what conclusions we glean from it. To pivot topics, what is your take on DEI? Is it helpful for our society? Is it harmful? What do you make of it?
Oh, well, that is quite a shift.
Yeah.
For the most part, I don't think it's helpful. First of all, there's not much evidence for and some evidence against that DEI training programs, workshops, seminars, books, those little computer training programs everybody has to take online, that they even work. And by work, I mean, what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to make you more tolerant, more open to people of color, minorities, and so forth, make you more sensitive about how you interact with other people, like don't tell off-color jokes and racial jokes and jokes about women and Jews and so forth. Do they actually do that? There's not much evidence to show that they even do that. Not to mention, most people are not racist and bigoted and misogynistic. They're not. We've come a long ways in 50 years in terms of moral progress. And polling data shows that most people have no problem with interracial marriage. They have no problem with gay marriage. They're very open to LGBTQ rights and so forth. So who are these training programs really targeting? Well, first of all, those people are already pretty liberal and tolerant. So you're left with the actual handful of, bigoted, racist, misogynistic people that are out there But do you think they're going to be swayed by one of these training programs? Or go, oh, I had no idea I shouldn't tell off-color jokes about Jews and blacks.
Well, let me ask you a question. So maybe I don't know much about the training programs. Maybe they're no good. I mean, it sounds like some of them might be not that effective. But what do you think about the principle of DEI? Like what the intention is, what it intends to achieve? Let's say that the trainings or the videos or whatever are not that helpful. But what about the idea that women and people of color are underrepresented in different industries, and part of the reason why is because in the case of like companies, they're not as able to easily access minority candidates because of the systems in place, and so it's not that minority candidates are less qualified or less intelligent or capable, but they might not as often get on the radar of a company who's making a hire. And we know that it's in the company's best interest to hire diversely, right? You want the Galileo project brings on Michael Shermer because he has a contrary opinion, right? And any company wants to have their employees to think differently. So like Mark Cuban prides himself on really trying to find people with different perspectives. Like, do you think that pursuit is noble, or do you think that the hiring process is good enough? And
well, of course, Mark Cuban doesn't apply that to the Dallas Mavericks. In the Dallas Mavericks, it's talent and skill and hard work. And that's it.
I bet he does, though. So if there's a wonderful basketball, if there's the best basketball player and he's across the world, Mark Cuban would like to find that guy and put him on his team. And that's what DEI means to Mark Cuban. It means finding the best people.
It should be regardless of that person's race or ethnicity.
But that's a perfect example, actually. So, like, if someone across the world is like a phenomenal basketball player, but they have no access to, they were never able to join a college basketball team because they're across the world, right? They were never able to get in touch with an NBA recruiter because they're across the world. If Mark Cuban can find that person, he'll bring him on to the Dallas Mavericks, right?
And that's but I think any team would do that. I don't think you need a DEI because they are looking for, and the NBA has done that.
Going to find that person, like that's what DEI means to Mark Cuban, as I understand it. It's about like finding the person. If there's a 7'9" basketball player who's got better shooting skills than Steph Curry, but no one knows about him, I think that's what Mark Cuban would say is like, hey, like that person doesn't have equal access to this recruiting system, so let's go find that person. And I think that's how he applies the same framework to companies. That's my understanding.
Yeah, sure. Is that noble? Yes. Is it necessary? I'm not so sure. Originally it was. I mean, let's just roll the clock back to affirmative action in the civil rights laws that were passed in 1964 by President Johnson. Yes, there was a lot of discrimination, either overtly or covertly. There was lack of access to jobs and schooling for minorities, for women, for Jews, and so forth. That's all true. And that's what affirmative action did. I mean, that's why the government started keeping track of race and gender and all this on their data sets for the Labor Department, so they could know, is this working or not? But I think we've come a long way since then. I mean, if you just take a specific thing like orchestras, right? I mean, if you look at orchestras from the 1950s and 60s, they're all white males, right? Is it true that that white males are better at this? And no, it's not true. And now there's Asians, and half the orchestra is women, and so on. And so clearly, if you open it up, but now are they hiring? Are these, what do they call them? Diversity hires? No, they're not diversity hires. These are really the best talented people that are available, and they're picking from a wider pool of talent per your examples. So yeah, to that extent, it works. And I think that has been true in academia and in the corporate world. I think we've done all that already in the 70s and 80s and 90s. The question is do we still need it? This is the real debate to me. Is it true that, let's say, to pick a specific example here, STEM fields, particularly physics, engineering, math, why is there still such a skewed ratio of men to women? Is it true that places like Caltech and MIT are still being run by these old racist, misogynistic guys that just can't see their way to hiring women and people of color. As I see it, no, that is not the case. I mean, pretty much everybody in academia is pretty liberal, including those that are running the universities now. The old racist, white, misogynistic guys, they're gone now. They're retired or dead. Everybody I know, I'm turning 70, and everybody I know that's my age, they're all uber liberal. They're trying to hire more women and people of color in these departments. So the real debate is what's called the pipeline. So there's just fewer applicants that are of color or female in those particular departments. And the question is, why is that? It's not a problem in, let's say, linguistics or medicine. There are more female medical doctors now graduating than male. So clearly women can do it and they want to do it. Okay, great. Problem solved. But why is that not happening in math and engineering? Well, there's a pipeline problem. Why is there a pipeline problem? Why aren't there more applying? Because they're not going into those fields in, say, middle school and high school. Why aren't they doing that? Are the middle schools and high schools across America, staffed by all these misogynistic people? I don't think so. I think it's an interest. Men and women have different interests on average, and more women want to go into medicine than, say, physics. It's just the way it is. That's how I read it anyway.
But isn't our society, aren't there people who still have less access to certain private schools, certain levels of education? Like, isn't it, I don't think we have a totally equal society, right? Like, if you're born into a certain income bracket, it's harder to get a certain level of education.
Yeah, that's a different problem. That has to do with poverty and how schools are funded. They're largely funded by property taxes. So you get a kind of a zip code effect where, a Matthew effect for the zip codes. To those who have more shall be given. So these zip codes with higher property values generate more property tax income. So the public schools in those neighborhoods are better. So more people want to move there. That drives the prices up. So the property tax revenue goes up. That funds the schools and makes them even better. To the rich, they get richer and the poor get poorer, the Matthew effect. But that's more of a political issue having to do with, how taxes are distributed, how public schools are funded. I don't think it has anything to do with diversity and racism and bigotry, misogyny and all that stuff. I think that's a different kind of problem.
You don't think they're connected, though?
Indirectly, because African Americans are more likely to be in these lower, let's say, lower income neighborhoods. So the property taxes are not as high. So the schools are not as good. Yes, but that's a secondary. It's kind of a proxy for. Right. The deeper effect is, I think, more political and economic than it is race.
But what you just said, so if African Americans are more likely to be in the lower income area with worse schools than if Microsoft is trying to hire software engineers and they're only recruiting from MIT and Stanford, but those African American people who are just as intelligent, because of what you mentioned about the neighborhood they happen to be in, are less likely to get noticed by Microsoft when they're making that hire. Wouldn't Microsoft benefit by considering that? Well,
as I understand, I think that a lot of these tech companies are going that way now. I think Google is has gone pretty woke.
That's DEI, right? But what I'm saying is there looks like there's merit for the company to doing DEI.
Again,
because of what you just described.
Right? But of course they don't want to hire somebody who's not qualified, because that's not going to help the company. It's not going to help the person who is just frustrated on the job.
But sometimes there's a disconnect between like qualification and did you go to Stanford? Right.
Yeah, but I don't think they're just picking from Stanford. I think these tech companies are pretty diverse now. As I understand it, their hiring departments are really looking for exactly what your diversity.
But that's DEI, right? Isn't that
DEI? Yes, that's DEI.
So
but my point is they're already doing this, and they've been doing it for quite a while. So this DEI movement we're talking about is really just in the last couple of years, really maybe since.
When you talk about DEI, you're talking about above and beyond the recruiting policies that you just mentioned. Got it.
Yeah. The affirmative action that we've had, for 50 years. I think the DEI movement is slightly different than that.
You're seeing that as a kind of above and beyond that. Another light topic that is
Israel next?
Yeah, no, that would so Israel Palestine. What do you make of what's going on?
Well, I support Israel. I think they have a right to a state. You have to draw the line somewhere. They've been there.
Do you think it's fair to be critical of how Israel's responding?
Yeah, of course. Yes, of course. Yeah, absolutely. But so the problem is the calling for the eradication of Israel. Really, where are you gonna send these millions of people? And that's the part I'm critical of.
Well, that's one. I mean, there's many things, right? There's lots of factors. There's Israel, there's Palestine, there's Iran. There's lots of people you can criticize, and I'm asking specifically. Are you comfortable criticizing or being critical of Israel for how they've conducted the war in Gaza?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I found this issue is very one-sided. People either are pro-Palestine and they hate Israel, or they're pro-Israel and they think, it's like, I'd like to hear more people be able to feel bad for civilians dying on both sides, people who can be condemning Hamas and be critical of Israel for their actions. And what I've found is that you're either in one of two camps. If you're condemning Hamas, you think Israel's perfect. If you're condemning Israel, you can't condemn Hamas. And I think that's to me is a big problem. What do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, right. So, acknowledging Israel's right to exist as a state, that's a good place to start. And then, the hostages, all right, we got to get those back. And then, from there, is there a way to do this and minimize the carnage of civilians in Gaza that have nothing to do with Hamas? That would be the better goal. I don't think Netanyahu's done a real good job of that. Yeah, I'm just surprised I just can't. Even before October 7th, I couldn't believe he's still in power. Yeah, people have already forgotten about all the, the accusations and charges and convictions of fraud, and I forget what embezzlement. I don't know what all he was involved in. Pretty bad. I mean, how is it possible this guy's still in power? I really don't know.
Yeah, he's got a really strong voice.
I guess
tone of his voice very.
I guess I do think it's time. He's got to go, and they need a new leader.
Yeah, I agree.
And maybe at this point, it's been so long. We're going to come up here in a year and a couple months on October 7th, and maybe it's time to just stop. We're going to stop. We're going to get the hostages back, and then we'll pick up from there. Something like that. I mean, that's what the State Department's trying to do now.
Yeah. Have you? Have you spoken at all about assembly theory? Another topic I wanted to ask you about.
Well, I had Sarah Walker on the show.
Yeah,
I read her book. I read some stuff on assembly theory. She, there was some people talking about it at this conference I was at. I'm not sure I fully understand it. It's pretty technical. This is not one of my areas, origins of life research. I know a fair amount about. I've read all the pop versions of it, but the technical versions I don't really understand. What struck me about Sarah's approach in her new book is that she's admitting science does not have a valid explanation for the origins of life. And it's been so long since they've been studying this, really over half a century, or even more, really, of sort of technical, trying to get at it. And so her approach is we need a whole new, like a paradigm shift. We not because of the evidence or whatever. Let's just try something completely different and see if we can make any progress that way. Okay, go for it. Apparently her thing is assembly theory. I forget the name of the scientist now. My memory here. Sorry. Who is originated this? But go for it. My only interest in that mainly is because I have to confront and deal with the intelligent design creationists who are using this as a weapon against evolutionary theory and science education and so on. So that's how I intersect with it. So it is refreshing because they say, scientists are covering this up or they're not admitting they can't explain the origins of life. Well, no, Sarah Walker works in this area. She just said, we don't have a good explanation. Here's a new one. Okay, good. Let's try it.
If you talk to Lee Cronin,
Lee Cronin, that's it. Yeah, sorry.
No.
Sorry, Lee. I have not had him on the show. I have not I've not met Lee Cronin. I've watched a couple podcasts with him, and Sarah speaks very highly of him. So
I could intro you probably if you're interested, by the way.
Oh, good. What do you think of assembly theory?
I mean, like you, I'm not it's hard for me to grasp it. So that's kind of my answer.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It could just be one of these problems that are just very difficult in science because the original information is all gone. The rock cycle means that, rocks from billions of years ago, they're gone. They've been cycled through the middle of the earth. So it could be that evidence is just not available. But maybe 50 years from now, maybe they'll have it figured out. Who knows?
It's hard to imagine that we'll ever fully understand how life was formed, right? Like, and I'm comfortable with that. It feels like it's an insurmountable, unsolvable thing. Like
I think there's a handful of these: the origins of life, the origins of the universe, why there's something rather than nothing, the hard problem of consciousness. I mean, some of these have been around for so long, it makes me think, either they're insoluble, or we just need a completely different approach, or we're never going to get there.
But in all these cases, like, we are the organism living in the lens of the question being asked. So, like, how do you answer the question of what is the universe when you're inside the universe? And we're never going to be outside the universe. How do you answer the question of what is consciousness when you're within consciousness? Like, these are questions we're asking outward but we're within the matrix in which the question is being framed, right?
Yeah, exactly. How does the mind know itself?
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, you don't even sense that your brain is operating because it doesn't have that kind of sensory apparatus. It doesn't feel pain, for example. Right. So once neurosurgeons have opened up your skull and cut through all the muscles and the bone and the dura mater and all that stuff and get to the brain, they can just wake you up and talk to you. They do this all the time with these epileptic patients, where they go in and they tap around with electrodes to figure out what's going on and where the seizures are starting, so they can zap those neurons. So this is one of the ways the brain has been mapped. Is they wake the patient up and they go, okay, tell me what's going on now. And they touch some place, a little electrical stimulation. The person goes, oh my God, that's my 5th birthday, or now I'm floating up by the ceiling, or whatever. I'm now seeing whatever. So this is the place for that, right? Wilder Penfield in Canada was the pioneer of all this a long time ago.
Bizarre.
Yeah, I know. So, but that doesn't answer the hard problem. Is why should you experience being up by the ceiling at all? That's a harder problem than where is it happening in the brain.
Yeah, it's tough questions. What do you think are the biggest problems in our society, like in terms of rational thinking, in terms of a lack of rational thinking? Is it the Republicans? Is it the Trumpers? Is it the anti-Israel people? Like, what do you think is the biggest problem?
Probably the large thing capturing all that you just said is the my side bias.
The what bias?
The my side. My side is right. Yeah. From there, you go using the confirmation bias to show why your side is right, or the hindsight bias, and so forth. All those cognitive biases are under that larger, what's roughly called motivated reasoning. But you're motivated to do what? And in this case, the my side bias says you're motivated for supporting your side. Well, who's your side? Your political party, your religion, your theory, your economic ideology, whatever it is. And that's a big problem. And I mean, that's always been the case. We're more polarized now than ever before. I mean, lots of statistics and data by political scientists showing how much people have moved from the center to the far left or far right. That is, people that used to identify just left of center or just right of center have now shifted toward the margins, to the MAGA right or the woke left. I don't think either side is worse than the other. I think they're both pretty bad. I mean, I follow all this. I'm kind of libertarian, so I can see the flaws in both sides, and including of libertarians. But that shift from I disagree with you about this tax policy or abortion or immigration or whatever, to if you don't believe what I believe, you are evil. You're not just stupid. You're bad.
Well, I've been thinking about that a lot, because if you and I have different tax policies, then whatever, you think we should get taxed 40%, I think 35%, and whatever, But if I'm very, very, very pro Palestine, and you're very, very, very pro Israel, then I think you want to commit genocide.
Yes.
And you think I want to commit genocide. Right? So the cost of believing the opposite, if you're on the extreme end of the Israel-Palestine debate, is literally you think the other person wants to commit genocide.
Yeah.
So do you think that's part of the?
Yeah, that's a problem, because that means it's a moral issue. It's like pro-lifers they think abortion is murder. Really no different from just killing an adult person. It's the same thing. And so no wonder they're so passionate about it. I mean, who would endorse murder? Oh, I think murder is fine. Oh, do you? Okay. So I mean, that's not helpful.
So why is it more polarized now than before? Why is our society more?
There's different theories about that. The media economic models are set up such that the more extreme you are on either side, the more clicks you get, the more eyeballs, the more ad dollars. I mean, really, this goes back to Rush Limbaugh in the 80s. Where, he kind of pioneered. Once radio changed and allowed people to make political commentary without censorship and restriction, which was not the case, say, during the 70s and 60s, then it became kind of a rush to see who, Rush Limbaugh, a mad dash, let's say, to see who could be the most extreme. And so the further out Rush went, the bigger his audience got and the more money the station made and so on. And then there's tons of copycats, the Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson are the kind of, and Bill O'Reilly. They're kind of the sequels to Rush Limbaugh. And do
you think Tucker Carlson believes what he says?
I have no idea. He could just be a total bullshitter. It's really hard to say. I don't know him personally. I suspect he believes some of it, but I don't know which part.
Yeah. So you think it's the media kind of driving the polarization? It is the extreme. Like, you can be pro-Israel, pro-Palestine. There's wise minds on both sides of the argument for most issues, right? It's not that Republicans are bad and Democrats that are good. It's the extremes on these issues that are tough to. It seems to be problematic.
Yeah.
So how many out of the population do you think are the extreme views a very small percentage and we're just hearing a lot of it because of the media, or is it truly a societal problem that so many people are at the extreme ends of these issues?
I think it's the former. I agree with you. I think
that's good.
It's a loud minority of people, right?
That's good.
But they're the ones that get the eyeballs, and that's why like libs of TikTok is a hilarious Twitter feed to follow because they just post videos of these crazy woke, blue-haired people doing the stupidest things you could possibly imagine, and they're hilarious to watch. But how many of those are there?
Yeah.
There's 340 million people. Yeah. You can find somebody doing.
I mean, maybe you shouldn't watch that, right? Because that's showing the extreme. When Ben Shapiro makes fun of them, I don't understand the point of that. They're not representing the liberals of America. They're representing a niche component of America, and this is how it works. To make fun of them, it's like, some people are different. Some people are, but. If you're poking and picking at some minority person, some person that represents a minority viewpoint, and making them look stupid, I don't know what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, they're trying to accomplish I know. Like in the case of Ben Shapiro, he's a conservative. He wants to make liberals look like idiots because
he should look at a mainstream.
That is literally his day job.
He should look at a mainstream liberal.
Yeah, but he's not a statistician. He's not a pollster. He's not a data analyst.
He's a smart guy, though. He knows
what he's doing. But that's not his job. His job is to show conservatives is the way to go. The Republican Party, Trump's not great, but hey, that's what we got. But the libtards, they're all like this. You see those videos on libs of TikTok? They're all like that. If you vote for Kamala Harris, that's what our country, the entire country is going to be like that.
But then you're stoking hatred, and it's a fallacy.
I know it's not good. No, it's not good.
Not good. What do you think needs to be done? In your perspective from your research on critical thinking, how do we get the country to converge more than they are, whether it's in the media or in reality?
Well, I mean, this, kind of as a deep root cause question, education, teaching critical thinking, teaching people all those cognitive biases, the ones we just discussed. The my side bias, not that many people know about this, but the moment you know about it, you recognize it in yourself and others. Although there's some research that shows people are not good at seeing it in themselves, but they are good at catching others at it. In any case, something like that, but more to the point now would be if you could carve out a niche. This is what we're trying to do at Skeptic. We are not political. We just want to tell you the facts, and you use them as you wish. But there's not a good financial model for that. I mean, this conversation we have with my team, how come we don't grow as fast as, Daily Wire and, Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh with his, What is a Woman film? I mean, they're hilarious, but how come we don't have viral things like that? And the answer appears to be because we're not taking a side. We're saying, here's some data we collected and analyzed, about police shootings or rates of abortion or whatever. And the left gets the one wrong and the right gets the other one wrong. Yeah. But it's not sexy. I don't know.
You need to be more hateful.
Yeah, Jake, I don't know. That's just the way the economic model.
What is the my-sideism? You've mentioned this term a couple of times. Like, what is it exactly?
So the my-side bias.
My-side bias.
Yeah, it's just it's kind of an umbrella term for capturing what all these specific cognitive biases are doing. Most notably, the confirmation bias, where you look for and find confirming evidence for what you already believe. You ignore or rationalize away the disconfirming evidence. Everybody does it. This is part of what's called motivated reasoning. That is to say, that the theory behind it is that we did not evolve rationality in order to understand what's called veridical perception, to understand what the world is really like, to get an accurate picture of the way things really are. Our reason evolved to win arguments, to support our team, our tribe, our little band of hunter-gatherers, whatever, that we're right, we're the good people. That's what reason evolved for. This is Hugo Mercier's theory and Dan Sperber's theory in their book on reason, The Evolution of Reason. Anyway, I think they're probably right. And so it's hard to overcome this bias. What's the larger bias? It's that I want my side to be right. So it's my side bias. That's the problem. Got it.
It's that we really want to believe that we are right and the other people are wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why in politics, like in Bayesian reasoning, being a flip-flopper is a virtue. Hey, look, the evidence changed. I think I'll change my mind. In politics, that's a sin. You're not supposed to change your mind.
Who are you voting for? I can take a guess.
Oh, I'm not going to say it. I haven't decided. Probably the Libertarian. I'll probably vote the Libertarian candidate, which is a complete waste of.
You're not concerned about Trump trying to steal the election? And
no. Well, okay. Let me reference that. I'm not concerned about either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump winning the election as this being the last Democratic election that the country has. I've been hearing this since the first time I voted was in 1972.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying. So I think he's a bad dude because he tried to steal the election. I'm not saying he'll do it again or whatever. I'm just saying I look at what he's done and I think, he seems like a real jerk. I'm probably not going to vote for him. You don't have the same reaction.
I do.
Yeah.
I'm not I have criticized Trump from the beginning on this show countless times. I'm not quite a Trump derangement syndrome victim because I don't think that helps. I think we have 4 years. He didn't steal the election. He tried. But now he's not even in office. He controls nothing. He doesn't control the courts. He doesn't control the Supreme Court. He doesn't control the military. He can't give orders to anybody working in the government to make sure to give him the keys on election day. On the inauguration day. None of that's going to happen. So like everybody else, I suspect whoever wins, he's going to say he won. Even if Kamala Harris wins in a landslide, he's going to say he won. Yeah, well, so what? What's he going to do? Nothing. He can't do anything. It's not like he can get the army behind him and they march on the White House and storm it. That's not going to happen.
I'm just more wondering. I'm not concerned that our government's going to be overthrown. My point is that he's made himself clear in his character by trying to take the election, trying to get Georgia to find votes, so on and so forth. We can go through the 95.
Oh, it's all. Yeah, no, I'm with the never Trumper Republicans. The Lincoln Project, Andrew Sullivan, George Will.
So you'll vote for Kamala with me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Right, but again, I'm not saying who I'm going to vote for.
Well, there's two people, so
I know. Maybe I'll vote Libertarian. What's wrong with that?
So
I've met Jill Stein.
So make the case why you would vote for Trump.
I'm not going to make any case because I stay out of politics. That's part of my position here. Okay, if I was going to make a case for Trump, it would be economic policy, lower taxes.
But how do you forgive
typical Republicans? You can't. I don't know how any Republican does. I ask Republicans all the time, how can you vote for this guy? Particularly when I meet Christians, conservative Christians. I've asked, Dinesh D'Souza and a whole church full of people when I was debating him. Mm-hmm. How can you possibly, this was like after he got elected, 2017 or so. How can you possibly support this guy?
Yeah.
I mean, you're the party of values, family values. I mean, come on. And moral values and, truth telling and their answer is because first they said he'll get us the judges we want, which he did, right? So that, they were vindicated there. And also God works in mysterious ways. Look at the flawed characters in the Old Testament. God picks these weirdos and these flawed people. That's
their bizarre cop-outs. Those are the cop-outs you can use if you never want to make anyone accountable for anything. If you attribute zero agency, if you want to attribute zero agency to someone, you can use one of those cop-outs.
If you don't want to know where my mind is on this, Liz Cheney. I'm right there with her.
Oh, I don't know what she's about, but.
Well, Liz is her father was, of course, the vice president under Bush, Dick Cheney. But Liz, the standard Republican, politician, pro-life, pro-gun, pro-war. I mean, I don't agree with any of her policies, but she stood up for the truth in those hearings, on the January 6th hearings. And she was clear as could be. She said, my North Star is the truth, not my position on abortion or guns. None of that matters. The truth is what matters. And I thought, that I really admire. That's a good way to be.
Mm-hmm. And on that note, this has been incredible, condensed conversation. I'll let you go. We can enjoy the long weekend. Let me end the recording and we can spend a couple minutes just wrapping up if that works for you.
Okay, sure.
All right.